Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hi, everybody. Jackie Woodside here, the founder and the host of the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. I am so glad that you keep coming back week after week to hear these just deep and meaningful conversations about this really, perplexing question. What does it mean to live life consciously? So thank you for coming back week after week to explore this notion with me. I'm not here so much to give answers as I am as much to have us to continue to ask questions and look at our lives. Am I conscious? Am I awake? Am I aware? And I'm grateful today to have my new colleague here to bring some wisdom and some light to the conscious living stage, Cassandra. Ciarallo. I can think of it in Italian. Ciarallo, right? Did I do it right? No, Ciarallo.
There we go. Yes.
Ciarallo. All right. Cassandra Ciarallo is here with us on the Conscious Living stage today, and I'm really excited to hear her unique perspective about living life consciously. Cassandra was a social entrepreneur turned embodiment coach. She's passionate about helping people create their most enchanted lives and helps them reconnect with their self, reignite their passion and their desires, and rewire their thoughts and feelings and energy. She sounds like me from a different mother. So, Cassandra, I look forward to hearing more about you and about your particular path to conscious living. Why don't you say hello and a little bit more about yourself as I welcome you to the Conscious Living Podcast?
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's a real honor to be here. And I really was drawn to your podcast for the fact that it's called the Conscious Living Podcast, because I definitely would say I've been on a journey of continuously understanding what that means for myself and how I want to live. And so almost 10 years ago, I started another business in the world of sustainability and fashion. And my business at the time was called Chic Made Consciously. And this sort of emerged. This emerged from traveling in Asia and meeting a beautiful community of artisans that were based in Bali that were actually taking inner tubes of tires, trucks, motorbikes, scooters, all waste on the island and making it into these really cool, unique fashion accessories, bags, bracelets, earrings.
I've seen them. I've seen those in a shop down in Cape Cod.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I've actually seen those products made of all kinds of waste materials and the particularly the bike inner tubes and things like that.
Aren't they cool?
Make them into bags.
Belts. Yes.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. And so I was really fascinated to first meet this little artisan in his shop. And then the second part of the story that was just so heart opening was that he invited me to actually spend the afternoon with him making pieces. So I thought, okay, why the heck not? So I sat there. I made a bracelet. I made earrings. He kind of told me the story about how they started it and the waste on the island. And, I really had this extreme transformative moment where I just saw this man like sitting on the floor making pieces. And I thought to myself, whoa, there's a human being right here making this item. And as he was telling me, they were shipping globally to other countries. And I know that a lot of the things that we buy in North America are made abroad. And it was kind of the first time that I was able to put that into perspective of like, wow, I buy so many things that are made in Cambodia, made in Indonesia, made in China. And I never really thought about the human being behind what I was buying. And so it was actually life-changing. And I decided to partner with this beautiful community, and I started distributing their goods in Canada. They didn't have a distributor there at the time. And yeah, I started a new venture and I didn't know what the heck I was
Wow.
doing, but I was just very passionate about the movement of, supporting these local artisans in Bali and recycling goods that also I had never seen made into such beautiful products before.
Yeah, yeah. How
Yeah.
did you land upon that name, Chic Made Consciously? That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, it actually came about my initials, CMC. So my middle name is Maria. And I don't know, I was going through a ton of different names and it just like kind of was the essence of what I was creating. They were chic products and they were made consciously. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, and so it just kind of really represented what I was sharing with the world. And conscious for me, like the reason why I brought that into my brand was really the intentionality of how the goods were made and to really get people to sort of think differently about what they were buying. So to think more consciously as well. So these products that are made consciously, helping you to live a more conscious life. And to be honest, that trip and starting that company shifted my entire being because I came back home and I started to learn a lot about the fashion industry and how detrimental it is for the planet and for people. And I became this little eco activist where I was really, really inspired to share the story of who is making our goods and um, share, the waste problems all around the world, especially in Bali. And yeah, and then it just got me really curious about how we could, as a collective, really do things differently, really buy better and think better and do better. And then it shifted in the way that I was eating. It shifted in the way that I was showing up, in relationships, in my communication. I started to I was already on a path of self-development, but this sort of shifted things even deeper in a new way. And it started to get me thinking differently about what I was buying and the food that I was eating. I think I said food already,
Yeah, how did it shift your eating? I'm curious about that.
Well, I started to shop more locally. I started to support farmers and that whole like local is what's the term? Like
Oh, shop local.
shop local,
Yeah.
I don't know, like
Oh,
sorry,
yeah, I know what you mean.
like the
Globally,
global.
globally, right. Think globally at shop. Think globally, shop locally.
Yeah, it's something
There we
like
go. It
that.
took both of us, but we got
Yes.
there.
But sort of that became what I continued to be thinking about. So I was buying from these farmers, and then it was really like, okay, well, thinking about buying produce that's organic if I am not shopping at the farmer's market. And, the dirty dozen and the clean 15 of just like making sure that I was at least reducing 80% of the pesticide intake by eating like the clean 15. I don't know if people listening
I
are
don't know what
familiar
that
with
means.
that.
No, what is
So
it?
there's a specific amount of like fruits and vegetables that if you eat those, reduces your pesticide intake by 80% if you eat just those organic. Yeah, because a lot of them are, you know, avocados and like those ones you can eat if they're non-organic. Like you can eat whatever you want to eat. I'm not telling you what to do on this podcast, but if you would like to reduce your pesticide intake, there's a certain amount of fruits and vegetables that can support that, right? Like oranges, lemons, things that have the peel. And then if we think about like apples and grapes and strawberries and spinach and kale, like those things, you definitely want to make sure you're eating organic. Yeah. So you can look those up. Just Google like dirty dozen clean 15. And yeah, so it started to sort of bleed into every other area of my life. And then I just really became super intentional about the brands I was shopping from. I would do lots of research. I started to actually educate, and I partnered and was part of this organization called Fashion Takes Action, and I was teaching in their youth program, going to schools and teaching about the social environmental impact of fashion. And so, yeah, I was very in that world.
Say a little bit more about that before we move on to your new career, but I want to hear about, the impact of the fashion industry on our world. You said you were teaching about that, and I don't know that I'm aware of it. So what is that?
Yeah, well, it's the second largest world polluter after oil. And that's because of the pesticides that are used, especially in cotton, but other crops as well. But cotton is like pretty much considered to be the world's dirtiest crop. And the thing is, we don't think about cotton really, like we think about foods when we think of pesticides and herbicides used. And then, yeah, so it's like in a lot of these parts of the world where we often don't think cotton is grown, it's done in ways that are very detrimental because a lot of the farmers are not even wearing protection. So it's affecting, the people in the cities, in these rural communities. And so that's like the crop. And then at the end of production, there's also like dyes and chemicals used in the process to get our really bright colored clothing. And then what's happening is, and then so in production, there's also a lot of toxic chemicals used in the dyeing process, which are then often dumped in rivers, lakes, and, freshwater areas around the world. So there's actually,
how do you combat that then? How do you shop consciously for fabrics and clothing and garments?
Yeah, so it's really important to read your labels, to know like where it's coming from, because if you can first find out what country it's made in, you can ask more questions about like first of all, how they treat their employees or their workers, and then what kind of material they're using. Is it cotton? And if it is cotton, is it organic cotton, or where is it grown? And what are sort of the ways in which they actually are facilitating the growing of the crops or the farms, and sort of just like, what are the conditions for the workers? And yeah, what about the supply chain? So it's incredibly complex. I mean, I just kind of like touched
right
like the
very
tip
high
of the
level
iceberg.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and I often would go into places about, because then there's like climate change and all of these like really big issues around the world that we don't really connect the fashion industry to at all. And it's incredibly overwhelming when you start to tackle these issues, because as a consumer, you're like, well, what the heck do I even do? And I was very much part of like, well, there's this triangle, right? Like it's consumers, it's the systems, and it's the government. And so I think the more that consumers buy differently, and ask questions and continue to be curious about what's going on in these businesses and these supply chains and do things differently, like that's what's going to shift the systems, and really engaging in like, asking questions to our municipalities and seeing like what could be done differently. And, I think it really just starts with asking the questions and not turning a blind eye to how we're consuming. And that's a really big part of the conscious living, right?
Absolutely.
The consciousness.
I don't think we think enough about how we can be conscious with our money and what we choose to buy, how we choose to spend our money and use our resources. You've moved now into the field of coaching, and I find it really fascinating that you call yourself an enchantment coach. So how did you come upon that, and what does it mean? And let's dive into that a little bit more.
Totally. Yeah. So I'll just sort of finish the story of moving out of the last business and sort of what enchantment means to me and why I even got here, how I got here. running that business was incredibly rewarding. But I feel like as an entrepreneur, especially in the beginning, there were just such extreme highs and lows. I'm sure many people listening can relate to that as an entrepreneur. And then given the industry that I was in, like I said, it was just sort of, people in the industry would call it eco fatigue, because you would just be like so fatigued about everything that's happening because you don't really even know how to take action.
Right.
Yeah. So essentially I burnt myself out. And it happened a couple times where it wasn't too bad, but I could tell my body was literally telling me like, enough is enough, you need to stop. And the third time I got pretty sick and I was like, okay, what the heck? This is not why I became an entrepreneur. And this is not me living consciously. This is me disregarding my body, my internal cues, my ability to slow down in the pursuit of like needing to help the world. But I'm like, I'm not even helping myself. So how is this supportive for the world? And initially I wasn't thinking like that, but I was along the journey just realizing how disconnected I was to my body. And so just before COVID, I was at a networking event at a conference where I normally see a lot of the same women in sustainability and fashion. And one of the women who I was close with was telling me she was moving into this new realm of work in the art of presence. And I'm like, what is this? And very fascinating to me, because a lot of the things she was sharing were things I was desiring, but didn't really know how to do. Like, I know it sounds so simple, but like slowing down and being in more of a receptive state versus always like doing and pushing and forcing, and like listening to the body and being more in the feminine, she used was some of the language, and and that yin energy. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, this is very resonant, but I feel I don't know how to do that literally because I'm clearly not able to, as I just keep being in this pattern of burnout and working myself to the grind. And, that's clearly the signs of how we live in society, especially in the Western world. It's just like, don't stop, keep going, no time to slow down. You're
doing and not being.
It's doing and not being. Yeah. And then when you're not doing, you get criticized and judged for it. And it's like you wear this badge of honor for like overdoing it and being part of this hustle culture that I just honestly felt so done with and didn't know how to change those patterns. So I started taking her course and really realized how disconnected I was from my body, because a lot of the things we were doing, I could understand it, but I couldn't actually feel it yet. And I had a hard time really connecting with myself. So I was like, okay, just very curious about like how I could continue to develop a deeper relationship with myself. And so I took her level 1 and level 2, and then I ended up taking a 3-day experience with her teacher that she invited me to. And this was the summer of COVID, and I was really clueless as to my direction. I felt like everything was just crumbling. I didn't know that I wanted to continue on the path that I was on, because my relationship to the way I was operating, I knew was unsustainable and not me living consciously. So I knew something had to change. And, it kind of, even though the mission that I was creating and moving towards was so like heart-centered for me, it just felt like I needed to have a really big change in order for things to actually change. And so I knew it meant changing the way that I was running my business. And I didn't want it to be the products anymore. And I just knew, it was time for a chapter to be closed. But I had a hard time still like acknowledging that with myself, right? There was a lot of like, you're a failure and all of the things that naturally come with a big change. So I actually invested in an 18-month program to continue to dive into this work. And at the time, it was just what I felt like I needed for myself. And the more that I continued the journey, the more I realized, like, wow, this is actually changing the way that I'm showing up in the world, the way that I'm relating to myself, the way that I'm able to discern things that my body is telling me. I'm able to actually now understand that I don't have to just people please and overgive. And it's like these concepts that I think a lot of us talk about in society, but to be somebody who's like extremely accommodating and just used to people pleasing, like these are very challenging patterns to break.
Oh, very much.
And
Yeah.
yeah. So I was in that
Yeah.
and just continued to see the rewards of my relationships changing and people actually saying like, oh, you feel so different. And I'm like, oh. And as I continued to immerse myself in this world, it was just clear that like this was the next thing for me.
Yeah. I'm
So
curious about a phrase that you used a little bit back. You said, I've been so out of touch with my body. And I hear people say that it's a phrase that people use, but what does it actually mean? And how can our listeners maybe relate their own experience in their own lives to, are they in touch with their body? So what does that mean? And what did it mean for you?
yeah. So what it meant for me was that I didn't want to actually feel what was going on inside of me. I didn't want to be and sit with the discomfort in my body. So I had this tendency to grasp and reach for this feel good feeling. And in many different phases of my life, it was different things. It was substances at one point, it was sex at another point, and then it was my business, right? I was just overdoing it. And what I would say, like filling the void with something that made me feel good. So I would feel good when I was working hard on my business because it made me feel like I was receiving validation of some sort from the external world to tell me that I was worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see this with many of my clients: overeating, overspending, overworking, stuck in these, like the rat race of overdoing it in some way to not want to feel, because
So you
there's,
mean out of touch with your body or out of touch with your emotions?
yeah, I mean, I guess I would say both, because there's physical sensations, then there's emotional feelings, and so both of them. I think that there might even be physical pain in the body that may be manifesting from something that hasn't been addressed for a really long time. Those could also be there from like negative thoughts or negative patterns, but we don't really want to feel them, so it then turns into physical pain. um Again, it could be very different for many different people. I'm speaking of my own journey, where I've seen things sort of manifest physically, but yes, definitely emotionally too. I think emotionally is probably the top of the chain, because we maybe feel grief or sadness or anger and we don't know how to express it or let it out or even acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I have found on my journey, most of the time when I sit with what is there and just acknowledge it, it moves and it's like almost dissipates, depending on what it is and what I'm experiencing. But when I can just be with it and acknowledge it and say, hey, I'm with you and I see you, like the energy has space now to move. The emotion has space to move. Emotions are energy in motion. So yeah, I was not wanting to feel the things that were going on inside of me.
Okay.
And
We live in
so,
a very distracted world, right? It's almost
yes.
like our culture is super committed to making sure we're not present in the moment. You know, everybody's got their
Yeah.
computer in front of their face, they're with their iPhone or their smartphone, or their AirPods in, their hoodie up, the hoodie up and the AirPods in, eyes down,
don't make eye contact.
Right. Don't make eye contact. It's like crazy. And then, all of these distractions of like constantly, the notifications on your phone, and then you come home and you're on the computer, and, the 24-hour news cycles. And, it's just unbelievable. Screens in cars, in the back seats of cars that you can watch a movie while you're in the car. Like, seriously? When do you ever just be with yourself? So what's your reflection on, our culture and the problem or the pain that it causes to constantly be being pulled out of the present moment?
What is the pain that it's causing?
Yeah, or the pain or the problem what problem do you see that leads to, of people just constantly being pulled out of the present moment with this distraction and that distraction?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an epidemic, to be honest.
Right.
It's definitely a skill that we need to develop. And it's a training where coming back into the body and bringing ourselves back to present is more important than ever before.
It's like a battle, right?
It is
pulling you out, and then your higher wisdom wanting to pull you back in.
Yeah. And I think that's always been there, maybe in the past, in different cultures and ages of past, they would just be distracted by different things. But the amount of times that we are distracted now, it's needing to be conscious and intentional to put your phone away during the day, to silence all your notifications. It's very important to set ourselves up in a way that's going to support a deepened experience in all areas of our life. Like, I see that if I don't do that for my business, I will not be able to sit and do deep work, which will facilitate me being successful in the ways that I need to in my business. If I, don't do that with myself, then I will have a lot of emotions that will come up throughout the week that will continue to distract me as well in other ways. But a Harvard study actually proved that we're distracted 50% of the time. So 50% of our waking hours are spent not in the moment, spacing out, thinking about the past, worrying about the future.
Lower than I would have thought. That surprises me.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I think still half of the time.
Yeah, but I mean, I my experience of being out and about in the world is that people are just, I mean, I don't know.
It's true. They
upwards of 80%.
Maybe now it's different. Actually, this was a study of like a handful of years ago. So
yeah, I do. I find that to be incredibly low. I mean, just anecdotally, I certainly don't have any research behind it, but
I know that I did some research recently, and in an 8-hour day, we get distracted about 60 times.
Yes.
And so the even the more challenging part of that is that it actually takes between 10 and 15 minutes to bring ourselves back to presence and focus once we get distracted. And that's where I think building the muscle of like knowing how to come back into the present moment and into your body is fundamental, because if you get distracted, you know how to bring yourself back and refocus. And I think that's been like hugely supportive for my life and business. Because we can get more things done. We can like redirect our attention and focus and not just get caught up in whatever is going on, but we can say, oh, hey, I see that this is what is occurring right now. Okay, that's the conscious part, right? Kicking in, and then being able to have the tool and skill to bring ourselves back to present.
Let me ask you, Cassandra, some of the ways that you use in your coaching practice. What tips can you leave with our listeners today of how to bring themselves back into the present moment when they catch themselves ruminating about the past or being anxious about future occurrences? What are ways that you help people just come back and be present?
Yeah. So the simplest, easiest thing is 3 deep breaths.
Right. Just
like
breath.
taking 3 deep breaths. And then as you breathe, feeling your feet actually on the ground. And the importance of bringing our attention down into our feet is because when we're in the head, there's so much energy that's rising up to this part of our body, right? So what's important is to keep grounding ourselves down. And so the attention on the feet and the soles of the feet, you can do it right here, right now, feeling your feet on the ground, 3 deep breaths, simple things throughout the day, like, are my feet on the ground? Just asking myself, am I in my body? When you're out for a walk, can I feel my feet on the ground? Can I feel my hips swaying? Am I in my body? Am I in my body?
Nice.
I mean, I can go into more in-depth, like little techniques. Would that be useful?
Sure. I'd love to hear 1 or 2 of the techniques of the body. Sure.
So this other process, so that's the simplest one because you can do that within a few moments, right? 3 deep breaths, feel your feet on the ground. And then if you notice that you have some discomfort arising, you might not know what it is in your body. There's maybe an emotion you don't really want to sit with. But I have this process that I call NET. Notice is the N. So first of all, just even those 3 deep breaths will help, but you want to stop what you're doing and take a breath and notice, where is this happening in my body? Where do I feel this in my body? So first you're identifying where and what is occurring. Notice. And then the second one is E. Embrace. So it's the practice, and this takes time to practice it, but to try and embrace what you're feeling like a friend. If you could literally visualize that pain in your heart, like you were opening the door of your home to letting a friend in, right? So sitting with that discomfort and just saying, hey, I see you. I acknowledge you and I love you and I'm here with you, right? So just like simple words, whatever feels good for you, but really like acknowledging and opening yourself up to that feeling. That's the embrace. And then the T is transform. So the transform sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, may just naturally happen as you acknowledge that part. There's been feelings where I know, like, what happens is the discomfort gets bigger when we're resisting it. So for me, I know that when I'm in that place of, I don't even want to like acknowledge that. And then I do, it's like when it's witnessed, it's your friend, right? Being seen. If you literally think about that, if you're in a circle of friends, and somebody's being left out because they're intentionally not wanted there, how does that person feel? They're going to feel worse. So that's what's going on in our internal body, right? When we don't want somebody that's clearly there and present and wanting to say hello, and we're sort of pushing them to the side, like, what is that doing in our internal system? It's resistance. So embracing it, the transformation may occur on its own, or you can ask, what do I need right now? And that question is really supportive for you to get insight on what you need. Maybe you need a walk, maybe you need a journal, maybe you need a dance, maybe you need to call a friend, maybe you need to just sit in meditation. It's going to be very different. And this is where also the complexities arise, because there's no sort of right way, but this NET process will support you in feeling it, identifying where it is in your body, bringing some connection to what is occurring, and then just asking, what do I need? And just that practice alone, if you continue to do that with yourself, you'll continue to find ways where your body will tell you, oh, I really need this. Oh, I really need to take a bath right now. I really need to talk to nobody. I really need to take this afternoon off. I really need whatever it is. And you'll start to really build that strength of your relationship to self. And this is honestly like the enchantment, like where I think it came from, is just because the more that I found myself building this relationship to myself, the more there was like lightness in my body, the more that I could see that these highs and lows weren't so extreme, but that I could, there were still waves, but they were much more manageable. And I was learning how to be with myself, and I was listening to myself. And I truly believe like our enchantment lies when we can have an open heart with ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. What a beautiful note there to kind of wrap up on. Our enchantment lies when we can be in the heart with ourselves, be at peace with ourselves. It's really a beautiful notion. You've just got such a light and clean energy about you, Cassandra. It's really lovely to be around you. And I imagine some of our listeners might want to get in touch with you and talk with you about enchantment and about embodiment and the work that you do. So what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Jackie. That means a lot. And the best way to get in touch is follow me on Instagram. I'm quite active there at Coaching with Cass. Or you can also follow me or head to my website, coachingwithcass.com. And every month I do free live experiences on Zoom. But they are live, and you get an opportunity to learn a new practice. You leave with something very tangible. We do an in the body experience to help you move towards your enchantment. And it's very interactive. Sometimes people can ask questions and, get mini coaching. So it's a great opportunity for you to learn more about me and the work that I do, and also learn a new technique that I think will support you, and it's totally free. So yeah, I can find all that on my website or on my social media. Thank you.
Wonderful way for you to give back, just doing that free teaching like that. That's really lovely. Thank you so much for being here with us on the Conscious Living podcast today. I really appreciate your time, your generosity, your wisdom, and everything that you've shared with us. It's really been lovely to share this with you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's been a real treat. I appreciate it. And yeah, I love what you're doing. And thank you all for tuning in. I think that living consciously is a journey, and, one little step by one little step. Don't burn yourself out over it. And I just want to leave that with the listeners that, be gentle with yourself, and that you can take the next little step by just taking those 3 deep breaths and connecting with your body and, seeing what might come from that.
Yeah, I love that. Be gentle with yourselves. Let us all take our day. Thank you so much, Kaz. Look forward to next time.
Thank you. Bye, Jackie.